Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. My name is Riley Sager, and I'll be taking you along with me as I hear from some of the most influential people from all angles of the business of sports. This series guests each bring something unique to the table, from player scouting and analytics to media and broadcast, and I can't wait for you to learn how to invest in yourself while expanding your knowledge, experience, and network in basketball. Today's guest is SBC Lead Instructor Bobby Marks. Bobby Marks is ESPN's NBA front office insider, and in his new role at SBC, Bobby will be responsible for enhancing SBC's existing offerings, as well as overseeing the development of a new curriculum, including an in-depth video-on-demand course that reviews the changes to the 2023 NBA Collective Bargaining Agreement. Bobby provides commentary across all ESPN platforms, including television, radio, and digital media. He has been an integral part of the NBA's draft, trade deadline, and free agency coverage since he was hired in 2017. Marks started his professional career with the then New Jersey Nets as an intern in 1995 and rose through the ranks, eventually garnering the title of assistant GM in 2010. With the Nets, he was part of 2 Eastern Conference championship teams. A native of Little Falls, New Jersey, Marks graduated from Marist College in 1995 with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications at Marist. He was a member of the football team for 3 years. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. All right, Bobby, it's great to have you on the podcast. I'm super excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm a little bit tired. You know, you have like that hangover effect after these trade deadlines. When you get through, it's a long week. It's an exciting day, but I'm doing great. And you know, we're kind of in this stretch run of NBA basketball, right? We've got about 30 games left, and we've got All-Star break coming up. But it's an exciting time right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're a busy man, especially the past few days with the trade deadline. What's just a quick recap of what's been going on?
Well, you know, it's funny. We started the week, you know, really the first couple of days with I kind of termed it as like if you like to go fishing, you had the great bait and you're out in the middle of the water, but there was no fish to catch, right? Like we went through 3 days of basically, and I've been up here in Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN since Sunday, and we kind of were in this like just this period of really no action. And then all of a sudden there were a couple of trades trickled down on Wednesday. And then really the dam broke on Thursday morning here. And we saw certainly teams like New York get better. Dallas got better. Some teams like the Lakers kind of stayed pat. The Clippers got James Harden back in November. I think the slow period was a combination of players like Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby getting traded about a month ago. 2 of the main guys coming off the board here. But, you know, trades are hard during the regular season because you are reacting off emotions, right? Like you're playing basketball games here. So, you know, certainly the Chicago Bulls are being criticized because they're 3 games under 500 and they didn't do anything. And, but, you know, they're playing better basketball. They had a great win against Minnesota here. It's a little bit different than when you're in the offseason. You know, the offseason, I always say the offseason is when everybody looks great on paper, right? Like you make a trade, oh, we look really good. And then you start playing and you're like, we're not as good as we thought here. And I think that's kind of where the challenge is that when you're making a trade in early February here, you only have, you know, basically kind of 2 months to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a challenge, but how do you see that as an advantage for teams?
Well, I mean, there's certain ways to look at it. There are, if you're relying on the continuity, I call it the continuity factor here, where you basically did nothing. So if you're Cleveland and you are 16-1 since January 3rd, which is remarkable. Nobody's talking about Cleveland right now, right? Like nobody's talking about the Cavaliers. They're sitting in the number 2 seed right now in the Eastern Conference. They didn't do anything. They kind of stayed pat. But then you go into Brooklyn on Thursday night and beat them by 23, where a Nets team had just made 2 different trades and they only had a certain amount of players available. Same with, Dallas added a couple pieces, but they get Kyrie and Kyrie healthy and Luka healthy, and they go into New York that only had 8 players. So it becomes a little bit of a challenge during the regular season as far as adding players. The beauty of it is that the trade deadline used to be after All-Star Weekend. So basically, it was the Thursday after All-Star Weekend, and it took away what would go on as far as the All-Star game, because all would be about trade chatter here. What happens now is that since it's the Thursday before, you get a 10-day window, kind of to put all your new pieces together, your new players before, you get the break, and then you don't play again for probably another, a week to 10 days here. So you can integrate all your new players. But as I said, like, the hard part is that we always say the All-Star break is the halfway point. It's not. I mean, there's teams that have played 52 games already, that have 30 games left here. So it is a little bit, if you're going to make wholesale changes, it does present, I think, a little bit of a problem there.
Okay, and just to wrap up this little topic, what can we expect from the buyout market, at this point in the season?
Yeah, so the buyout market is a lot different than it was a year ago, because we've got a new set of rules that have taken place since last July. Back in 2021, everybody went crazy because Brooklyn went out and signed LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin got bought out of their contract. So when you talk about bought out of your contract, if you add $30 million on your contract, you are giving back like $3 million to go sign with the championship team. And the NBA world went crazy. How could Brooklyn sign these two guys? They were already spending, over the luxury tax, and the rich were getting richer, right? I mean, in reality, that the two players really didn't have much of an impact. Now, what the league has done is they've said teams that are in the first and second apron, so teams that are high spending. So we look at Golden State and Phoenix and Denver, Boston, Milwaukee, the Clippers, teams like that. They're not allowed to sign a player that's waived or bought out of their contract that had a pre-existing salary of $12.4 million or more. So for an example, Spencer Dinwiddie is waived by Toronto. He was traded there on Thursday. The Clippers aren't allowed to go out and sign him, or Golden State isn't allowed to sign him. If a player was earning $6 million, then he's free reign to sign with any of the 30 teams here. So I think we'll see a bunch of players get, certainly Dinwiddie is probably the headliner, I would say, as far as, I guess from the buyout market. Guys like Marcus, it's a lot of veterans, Marcus Morris, Danilo Gallinari, Killian Hayes, Corey Joseph. We get excited because it's the second trade season or second transaction period. But I always caution, there's a reason why these players are on the market, right? Like, there's a reason why they're on the market here. And rarely do we see, a player making a big impact, certainly in the playoffs here.
A lot's already happened in the season, but a lot more to come for sure. And I know you've been on the podcast before, and insight like that, especially for those NBA fans out there. But I want to get into like your upbringing and how you got involved in sports. I feel like so many people have either a crazy or unexpected story about where they are now, and I just want to hear it from you. So, growing up, what were your hobbies? Any sports you played?
I played everything. I played football in high school. I wrestled. I played tennis. I played hoops. Growing up here, I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York, to play football. I didn't take school very seriously when I first got there. I had a wake-up call my sophomore year because I was ineligible to play football. And basically, my parents told me, like, hey, you have a choice to make, right? You can either get your grades up, or we're not paying $40,000 a year for you to just hang out in your room and play video games. And so I didn't play football my sophomore year. Got my grades back. Played junior and senior year, and then when I got to my senior year, usually you're kind of coasting. For me, I was taking 18 credits per semester because I was trying to play catch up here. And I needed to do an internship to graduate. I needed 6 credits. And I had a friend who knew somebody who worked for the then New Jersey Nets, who was selling tickets. And I got my resume to them, got an interview before Thanksgiving in 1994, got hired to do an internship in PR in the summer of 95. And that was kind of my introductory to working in the NBA. I couldn't get a job after I did the internship. I hung around for another 4 months for free working in basketball operations. And finally, by January of 96, they're like, this kid's not leaving, so we might as well hire him. Got hired in January 96, making $18,000 a year, but I was living at home and I don't cares, right? Like it was money that was coming in. And that's how I got my initial start was doing an internship. And little by little each year, I kind of added something to my resume, whether it be working for John Calipari, who's a coach at Kentucky now for 3 years, or Rod Thorne, the man who drafted Michael Jordan for 10 years, or Billy King. Started to learn the salary cap in 2000 and how trades work and how front offices are built in the draft and scouting and all that. And then was named, assistant GM in 2010. So that's kind of my journey as far as breaking into, especially for, the media side is a little bit different, but breaking into in sports. And I always say, like, it's all about networking, right? It's all about kind of meeting people who, because the guy who got me the internship in New Jersey, a guy named Scott O'Neill wound up becoming the president of the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils, right? So he went from selling tickets for the Nets. He went to the NBA, then he went to the Knicks, then he ran the Devils and the Sixers, and now he's the head of Legoland, right? So it's your journey, right? I always tell people, like, it's a matter of just getting in. Like, I say, what do you want to do in life? And they're like, oh, I want to do what you're doing. Okay, well, you got to start somewhere here. You got to start like on the ground level. And the ground level is kind of like meeting people, introducing, breaking into sports is extremely hard. It's different in 1995 than it is in 2024 here. But that's kind of, a little bit of my journey as far as how I got into, working for the Nets there.
So you said, college football, sophomore year, you couldn't play because of your grades. So the Bobby back then, did he have, grand aspirations for careers, or like, what were you focused on? Did you, want to play football professionally? Like, what was your near goal?
If people did, people like you and people, who are in college now know what they want to do more than what I wanted to do in 1992. Like, it's funny, you talk to so many people and they already like what you're doing right now. And like, I would have never been doing this, like, and everything. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Honestly, like, I thought I maybe wanted to become a police officer. Like, maybe I want to work in law enforcement here. And then I was like, well, I don't feel like walking across campus to change my major because it's raining and I don't have an umbrella. Like, it's just like, I really did not know until I started working with the Nets. And I was like, this could be something that could interest me. And it's the same thing. Like, if you asked me 10 years ago if I would be working for ESPN or I started with Yahoo, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, you're crazy. I would never, like, you're going to write 10,000 word articles or 2,500 word articles, and you're going to be doing podcasts and you're going to be on national TV. And I would be like, you're crazy. So I say, like, just get in and then kind of let things figure it out, because you might actually like, whether you're working in marketing or in basketball operations or PR or doing something that you didn't think you would be doing. It's just about getting in.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at that time, high school and college, I mean, I'm going to ask, but are you glad that, you didn't know what you want to do and, like, you didn't put pressure on yourself to, take a certain internship? Like, you just kind of followed what you were, passionate about?
Yeah, I am. And my parents were terrific with that. Eventually they're like, hey, wait a minute, we just spent $160,000 on 4 years of college. Like, can you get something more than pays you $19,000 a year? So we do live in a different world, right? Like, we live in a different world in 2024 than in 1995, where I do think a lot of people put pressure on themselves. There are more opportunities for people, right? There's more opportunities for people to break into sports right now than there was 30 years ago, but it's more competitive now than it was 30 years ago. Like, when I started with the Nets in 95, I think we had 10 people in our department. That's it. We had a GM, a coach, two assistants, a secretary, a couple scouts, a trainer, and an equipment manager. Now 10 people represents the sports science department here, and teams go 70 deep just for basketball operations. So there's definitely more opportunity. But, when I was at Marist, we didn't have sports. There wasn't a sports management major here. It was communications. There weren't, specific, things that were, I want to work in negotiations, or I want to work in a front office here. Like, we never had that opportunity here. So I do think there's more pressure, because I think people see, breaking into sports and working for a team or working in the media, kind of what we're doing right now is the end goal here. But as I say, like, there's a path for everyone. Like, there's a plan for everyone here. And maybe it's, at the end of the day, it's not for you. It's not, sports is not for you here. But when you're in your late teens or in your early 20s, and you have the opportunity to get into sports and to break into sports, you have to do anything possible to do so, because that could lead to so many different opportunities.
So straight out of college, 1995, you're interning with the Nets. Was there a specific moment that you're like, okay, I kind of like this, or something about the internship that just made you want to stay?
You know what? We traded Derek Coleman to Philadelphia for Sean Bradley. And that was the first trade I'd ever been part, I didn't make the trade, but I was kind of part of it. And I was like, man, this is cool, right? Like, the action of it, picking up players at the airport, the transaction game and stuff like that. And I think that was kind of like my first taste as far as being part of that. I worked training camp that year. We had a training camp at Kutztown State in Pennsylvania. And I basically drove the van, right? Like, I drove the van, picked up players. I worked practice. I did laundry. I was part of a team. I was part of a professional team, learning how every different part of the organization worked for that department here. Right? So that was probably my first big, like, this is kind of what I want to do. This is why I want to stay. This is why I want to continually work for free. That hopefully it lands into a full-time job.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something there to say about working from the bottom, doing the minor tasks that, people don't necessarily want to do, but that have to be done, just like to be around the network that's so important in making connections. What would you say is the most valuable piece of that internship that, you still use today?
Well, I mean, it's just about the people you meet in network. I work, as I said, I worked for Willis Reed, who was the best, and then I worked for John Calipari eventually, about 6 months later here. It's just about, as I said, it's just about the networking and the ability to kind of meet so many different people who are now in different roles. You have either different people who worked, in the NBA, or different professional teams that you still stay in touch with. But I would say this to everyone listening that are trying to break into sports and to, want to get in this field, whether it be NBA or media. Like, it's so important to have a portfolio of what you're doing. And what I mean is that, and I've used this example before, and if you want to go buy a piece of art in Southern California, right? You walk into an art gallery, and there's no art, there's nothing there. And you say to the guy says to you, like, I'm a really good painter. And you're like, well, where? Like, show me. Like, no, but trust me, I am a good painter. And I say that because I talk to so many people, and they say to me, I work really hard. And I'm like, great. What differentiates you from the other 10 people that are interviewing for a position? Like, no, I work hard. I got really good grades. But you have to show people what you can bring to an organization, whether you're writing your blog, or you're doing a YouTube video, or you have a podcast, or anything that you have done before. That's what people want to see. That's what organizations want to see. I don't care if you go to Georgetown or a community college. Teams are going to hire the person they feel is the best, because they can contribute to that organization, because they can bring a skill set here. So that's my tidbit as far as people saying, like, how do I break into sports? Well, you got to have a portfolio. Like, you got to have a portfolio ready for, and that's the thing. We'll reiterate when we get to the Immersive in July and that's going to be my message from the beginning. Like this isn't summer camp. Like, this isn't everyone is spending a lot of money, and the goal is to get everybody a job eventually here. But for us to get you a job, you have to be prepared. It is not just going to be, I work 50 hours a week. Great. But what else can you bring to the table here?
Mm-hmm. In terms of your own work ethic, what was the most transformational period for you? Was it that internship or, right after?
It was working for Coach Calipari because it was all about survival. I mean, it was like, here's the thing. I didn't work as a manager in college, right? Like I wasn't part of a basketball program and I wasn't a manager and I didn't come from that lifestyle here. And it was a rude awakening and Cal this is before he got to Kentucky and Memphis. He was at UMass. He had just taken them to the Final Four. They had lost to Kentucky, who was coached by Rick Pitino. And we had hired him. There's this young coach who came in here, and it was like, and thank God I wasn't married and have kids because I don't know if I could have done it here because it was 18-hour days and it was a grind. But I learned so much for him as far as whether it be time management or work ethic here. That was kind of my wake up to the NBA type moment here, as far as when Coach Cal came on.
You've had quite a lot of experience, just different areas of the sports industry. But your role now, ESPN's NBA front office insider. What exactly does that mean?
Well, so funny when my contract with the Nets wasn't renewed in 2015, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I'd go back working for a team, but that would eventually require moving. So I, about a month later in June, closer to the draft, I started going on social media, started tweeting about transactions and how trades happen in front office and try to fit everything in 180 word or characters and go from that. And nobody was doing it. And it became like kind of a following. I started having like a following of people on then Twitter, and people started to recognize. And I was like, well, maybe this can turn into something. And I had, I had a relationship with Adrian Wojnarowski, who had covered the Nets and worked for the Bergen Record. And I had met with him in Vegas in the Summer League in 2015 on the concourse. And he was like, hey, and he was at Yahoo at the time. He was like, hey, we're starting a group at Yahoo called The Vertical. Right. We're going to have this separate, it's the NBA, and we're going to have our own group of guys, whether we're going to have newsbreakers and we're going to have people who talk about the draft, and we're going to talk about sneakers and all these different fun things. And like, we want somebody who's been in the front office, like who has front office experience. He goes, but you have to write, like, it's not 180 characters, right? Like you actually have to write stories. And I was like, oh my God, I got to write. Like I never did that in college. And I flew out to LA and I met with the people from Yahoo, and they offered me a job. And but the funny thing was, before I started there in January of 2016, I did some freelance stuff with Hoops Hype. And they're like, yeah, we want to hire you. We're going to pay you $500 an article. We want you to write about how Golden State can sign Kevin Durant in free agency in the summer of 2016. And we won 3,000 words, and I was like, great. I was like so excited. I literally just sat here at the computer. I was like, oh my God, how do I start with a paragraph, and how do I do an ending, and how do I do a middle? And that was my first introductory. So when you're asking like, so what is the front office insider for ESPN? And I've been here since 2017. This is year 7 for me. We have a terrific group of people here. We have a terrific group of writers, columnists, people on TV. But my experience of working in the front office with the Nets is something that nobody here has. So when we're talking about the trade deadline, or we're talking about free agency, and we're talking about the draft, I can give perspective that nobody else has, as far as how to build a roster and what teams are thinking, how trades actually work, why Dallas traded 2 first-round picks on trade deadline. Well, and basically, I loved what they did, and they have Luka Doncic, and you have to go all in at right now to do something like that. So that's, my role here at ESPN is different than everyone else here, where I have the writing component, where I'm writing trade guides, or I'm going to write about the buyout market here. I don't cover a team. I live in Southwest Florida, but I don't cover the Miami Heat. A lot of it is transactional, breaking news, I'll write about the 30 individual off-season articles for all 30 teams when we get closer to the off-season here. We'll do, I've been on the draft coverage for, I think the last 5 or 6 years here. So it's kind of a wide variety as far as what does the front office insider for ESPN do. One of the great things that I do that I enjoy the most is, closer to the draft, I help draft prospects prepare for their team interviews. So if you're going to go to work, you're going to get USC, you're at USC and you're going to go to the Lakers for your Lakers are interested in drafting you. Well, we're going to prepare for an hour, and I'm going to help you prepare the questions that are going to be asked of you. And what that's done, that's given me such a great knowledge of the players, not what they do on the court, like off the court, the actual person. So when I'm on the night of the draft and we're talking about Derek Lively from Duke, who the Mavericks eventually drafted. And I can tell you, Derek Lively's dad passed away when he was younger. His mom has been battling cancer. I can tell you about his journey. I can tell you about his story that somebody else maybe doesn't have, because I have intimate knowledge of helping him prepare for the draft and everything. So it's a wide range of things as far as, and it's a lot of it's based on season, right? Like, so we just got through the trade deadline, based from November to now, it's been transactional as far as who's making deals and what, we're writing about it, and we're doing podcasts, and we're doing YouTube, and we're doing TV. And now we get a little bit of a lull with the buyout market, and then we start focusing on the off season as far as playoffs. And so it's a little bit of everything. And then the beauty of one of the things that I really enjoy, and I call it like, I'm like a screenwriter. I'm a screenwriter for our TV group, or people who go on TV, where maybe you won't see me on TV, but I am helping them kind of, whether it be topics that they're going to talk about, they can use me as a resource, just because, like when Perk goes on TV and says, Golden State should trade Klay Thompson. And I'd be like, "Ooh, Perk, wait a minute. Like, yeah, I get it where you're coming from here, but you have to look at it from a front office perspective, right? Like, you have to look at it like big picture here." So I've loved my time. I love my time with ESPN. I love my time with Yahoo. It's different, right? You're not part of a team. Like, you're not part of, your wins and losses kind of dictate your mood the next day here.
Yeah, you said earlier, you can differentiate yourself because of the past experience you had. And, you mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast, how kids nowadays, you just have to get that portfolio, get that experience that makes you different. Aside from your experience, is there a certain skill that you have that you've just either always been good at, or, you picked up along the way that has served you most in your current job position?
Well, I don't know if I'm good at it, but this is what I would tell people who are listening, people in college: write. Learn how to write. I never took a writing class in college. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Or maybe it was my freshman year. But write, learn how to write. Learn how to write stories. Learn how to write blogs. Keep a diary. I regret that I didn't keep a diary, because I'd have a great book to write one day here. But keep a diary of what happened today. And that just, and what happens is, when I'm writing and I'm doing 30 off-season articles for teams, I'm going, man. I'm grooving. But if I don't write for a week, I'm like, oh man, how do we start this article off here? But that's what I would, I wasn't very good at it. I'm trying to get better. But learn how to write. Here's another thing too, is don't be scripted. Don't be scripted. Like, we're talking right now, and we're just talking, but don't be scripted as far as, I went on TV one year in 2018. This was the night of the draft lottery. Okay. LeBron's last year in Cleveland. So I think it was, 2018. And they had me on the on the monitor, and we were going to do all these different things. And I wrote a script out, right? And I memorized it. I remember being in a hotel room in Brooklyn and be like, okay, this whole thing. Yeah. When Mark Jones asked me this question, I'm going to be in I'm going to play, and I'm writing it. And what happened was, Mark asked me a question, but it was different than what I thought it would be. And it totally threw me off guard. I was like, I've never watched the video since. That I will never watch. I called my wife after, and I'm like, I'm getting fired. And I was like, because I basically like blacked out, right? So nowadays, what I do is I do all my research. I have somebody that helps me sometimes, but I do all my research. I am very hands-on. When the trade deadline is going and teams are making trades, I'm not relying on people feeding me information that it's not like I'm walking into a test and I haven't studied. So if you're going to be on TV, do not be scripted. Know your information. Have a conversation like you're sitting at dinner having a conversation. When I go on TV, and I did this past week, I work with touchscreens, right? So I'm doing the trade machine, or I'm doing we call a 3D lineup, and I'm moving things around and all these different things, or the free agency tracker here. Have a conversation while you're doing it. Like, you can chew gum and walk at the same time here. So if I'm talking to Randy Scott, one of our anchors, it's just like Randy sitting across from me at dinner. Okay. And be prepared for the next question, even if it's not coming your way. Steve Levy, who does hockey and did Monday Night Football, was the king of asking like the third and fourth question, right? When you go on TV, you know what's going to be asked. Like, here, Bobby, this is the two questions we asked. Well, Steve would always come in like questions 4, 5, and 6, right? So then you just have that conversation going here. But learn how to write. Don't be scripted. Do your own research. Be prepared for anything. Be prepared that the touchscreen is going to freeze. What happens when you're on live TV in front of 20 million people in the touchscreen? Yeah, make a joke of it. Have fun with it, right? So that's kind of my tips as far as where I was, how I've gotten better, continue with kind of what I'm trying to do.
Obviously, writing is a very important part of your career, but you mentioned a journal. Do you journal every day, or something that, in times where trades are going on and you can't control what's happening and it feels very inconsistent, like what part of your routine do you look forward to every day?
Yeah. So every morning, we can't watch every game, right? I mean, it's just impossible here. So every morning whether you're going through video or you're going through box scores, and I'm keeping we call it kind of like a box score tracker, right? So when I'm writing stuff in April, I can go back and, look at different trends and everything like that. My routine, certainly in the month of January, is a little bit different than probably what it's going to be in March or April here, where, we had 2 big trade guides, each were 10,000 words each. So it's kind of like a mini book. So instead of waiting until January 20th when it was due, banged out 3 teams a day, right? I always tell my son, who's a senior, and he's like, Dad, I'm like stuck on this article where I'm writing. I'm like, go for a walk. Because you might think of some things that you're not thinking if you're like sitting at your desk. So that's the one thing I would say is do not wait until the last minute when an article is due. Plan out your day. For me, it was, kind of like not really keeping a journal, but keeping notes on teams, whether it be, so when I'm ready to write, like right now, what I'm doing, what I call it is a master off-season research guide on all 30 teams. So I am preparing myself for when I have to write their individual team articles. That's going to be 800 words that I can pull from, and I can use that kind of as a resource as over the next few months here.
Yeah. What you were saying about the routine and just kind of writing and scheduling out your day, is that something that you feel like is necessary for most people? Like, personally, I'm someone, I like to have my schedule out, have a routine, that kind of thing. But is there something about your job now that you've had to just kind of go on the flow with, roll with it?
Well, I mean, I think, listen, when you work from home, it's different than working in an office. Like some days I just want to sit and watch Netflix, but no, like you got work to do and stuff like that. And I think the beauty of scheduling out your day is that when you're done with the 4 things that you have on that day, you're like, you know what, let me move on to the 5th thing that I was going to do on Saturday. And then what happens is it just kind of opens up more, freedom for you to do other things here. Or maybe an emergency happens and you have to move on you have to do something else. But you know what? I've already got those 2 things done. So I'm not scrambling. I'm not scrambling at the last minute.
You're obviously very passionate about basketball, and, as your career, most of your day is spent, either following teams, certain players. What do you like to do in your free time to kind of balance all of that?
I like to play tennis. I'm a tennis player. So it's funny. So after after we do this podcast, I am getting on a plane and I'm flying to Tampa, Florida to play in a tennis tournament this weekend. So, I played tennis in high school. I didn't play in college. When I moved to Florida in 2016, I started playing again. I don't play golf, so I don't have that attention span for 5 hours on the golf course. So I started playing tennis, and I really enjoy it. I mean, it's great exercise, and it's the same as going on the treadmill for 45 minutes here, where you can play for an hour or hour and a half. I don't play pickleball like the crave in America right now, but I do love playing tennis here, and I love listen. The beauty of ESPN and working, and then I worked for Yahoo, was that it gave me a lot of time to be at home. Right? To be at home. I have two boys. One's a senior and one's a freshman here. And I didn't have that opportunity when I worked for the Nets to be at home as much. I traveled like crazy. There were game nights. I was home late. I missed out on a lot of different things here, whether it be sporting events and everything like that. And I was able to go to all 14 of my son's JV basketball games this year. I was able to go to all his home football games, my son's swim meets here. So while I do miss the team part of it, right? I miss being in an office and being part of a group and, getting ready for the playoffs and being part of that. There's nothing more than being at home and, being a dad. Like, I wasn't a dad for, 10 years because of, my time with the Nets. And that was just my wife, God bless her, was able to kind of handle a lot of those things. But that's the beauty of it. Like, being home and having dinner conversations about like, hey, what happened today? And you just kind of listen, like through that. So I love tennis. I love being at home. I love working for ESPN. Like, I can go to bed at night and not worrying about wins and losses and stuff like that. There's different expectations there.
Do you ever pressure your son in basketball and be like, oh, your team needs to do this, or you missed this thing? Like, does he ever get annoyed with that?
You know what? I coached him from 4th grade to 8th grade. No, I never, he played football this year, and this is the freshman. And then he was like, oh, I don't want to play for JV basketball. The coaches asked him, like, just go out and have fun and stuff. So he went out. So no, I mean, it's the same with my, excuse me, my older son was a competitive swimmer, and, 6 a.m. workouts, 6 p.m. nights every day. And one time, his junior year, he got burnt out. Walked in my office and he was like, Dad, I don't want to do it anymore. And I was like, okay. All right. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. Like that, if that's what you don't want to do, like, you don't have to, like whatever, the one thing you don't want to do is pressure kids, well, I mean, if he was an Olympic swimmer, and he had his sights on Paris, I'd be like, well, maybe give it another chance here. But I don't think you could pressure kids in doing things they don't want to do here. So no, just because I worked for the NBA and I worked for the Nets and I work for ESPN right now, I don't pressure my kids as far as getting into sports.
Just one last question about, family life and that work-life balance. What's one thing that you've tried to instill in them, either whether they're in sports, trying to go for a tournament win, or just in general?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing is that giving back. I think you have to give back, because when you're going to college or you're going to work for a job, or you're going for a job, it's not about getting a 3.8 GPA. It's a matter of how much you can contribute to that organization here. And that's for anybody out there. It's like when I'm looking to hire somebody, it's about, how can you make our company better?
Mm-hmm. Now, moving forward to kind of the sports business side, this is the SBC podcast.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it was about like my life so far. So
we need to know. We need to know how you got here. The important moments in your life. But just looking forward, for those of our viewers and listeners who don't know so much about SBC, what could you say about it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. Right. I mean, the opportunity to work with Sports Business Classroom is something that I had maybe thought about, not, as far as, I think there has to be a point of your life as far as giving back to people, right? Like, and what we're doing here and what we've been doing since, I guess since August, is educating people, whether it be at the salary cap or learning how, front offices work, myself and Eric Pincus, who's going to continually work with us during the Immersive in Las Vegas here, give people hands-on life experiences as far as different classroom settings that we're going to provide in Las Vegas here. I think the big thing that people should know is that this is different than you signing up for, to go to a camp that your favorite athlete is going to be there, his name is on it. Like, I'm not rolling in on the first day on Sunday and you're not going to see me until Friday. Like that ain't happening here. Like I'm going to be in the thick of it with every day, from when we get going at 8:00 in the morning to when we get back to the hotel room here. And I think what Sports Business Classroom and the Immersive is that there's nothing out there that like this, where we're providing classroom type settings, whether it be analytics, whether it be learning the salary cap, whether it be scouting, whether it be video, whether it be learning how to write, whether it be media, whether it be agent negotiations. We are going to touch on mental health. We're going to touch on everything. And we're going to bring the best of the best to Vegas. Like, that's my goal. Like, this program works. Like, there's a reason why it's been successful. But my goal is to bring the best of the best to Las Vegas, to provide, knowledge and networking and real life experiences that when people leave on that Saturday or Sunday, they're going to say, like, this is what I want to do, right? Like, this is like, I want to give them a jump start as far as where their career is. And I've been thrilled so far as all the stuff that Eric and I have done, whether it been different webinars the last 3 months. I think there's a thirst of knowledge out there of people who want to work in sports, and in Sports Business Classroom is the only place where you're going to get it. Like, that's where you really get it. And the beauty of it is like once you go through the experience of Las Vegas, it's not like, okay, see you later, never to be seen. No, like, you'll have my contact information. You'll have everybody who's there's contact information. You can use me as a mentor. You can use me as a resource. If you're going in for a job interview, all right, let's spend an hour. Let's talk about who you're interviewing with. Let's talk about what you have prepared, who you should talk to. How do you maybe get into sports here? And I think what we're going to do is we're going to give you an advantage that no other place can give.
You're SBC's lead instructor this year. Is there something you're looking forward to, or what is your personal involvement? What kind of goals do you have going in, just leading these students through this course?
Well, first of all, my goal is like, and I saw this last year. I was able to kind of go when the night of I think it was the Sunday when they had like the cocktail party and everything like that, where they have the 125 people and it's mingling, and I saw a group of people sitting by themselves and stuff like that. Like, that's not happening. Like, that ain't happening. Like I said, like, this ain't summer camp, right? Like, that's not happening this year. You have an opportunity to meet and network with people, and and so everybody's in for the week. We're going to be one team here, right? We're not competing against each other, right? Like, the end goal is, eventually when you get into the workforce and you're going to interview, you're going to be competing against each other. But for that week, we are one team of 125 people, 150 people, and whatever amount of instructors as far as we have, whether it be 10, and whether, the guests that we're going to have come talk, the best of the best that are going to kind of give their, real life experiences and how they got into sports, whether it be athletes, whether it be front office people, whether it be coaches and everything like that. So my goal is you better be networking. My goal is you better be, respectful of the other people there, as far as, you're not trying to one up people there. And my goal is that if you're going to spend money to come to, for a week in Vegas, is that you've got to come away with things that we're going, and it's up to us to provide you with those different resources for you to get better and for you to get that job when you're done with college, or if you are done with college, for that next step in your life.
Bobby, it's been amazing talking to you. Just one last question for our listeners who, either they were part of SBC, they want to get into sports, they don't know what they want to do. What's your advice to them?
Well, you know what? I always say, first of all, set up a resume, right? Set up a resume. Go on LinkedIn, set up a resume. I respond to everybody. I even responded to people yesterday during the trade deadline here. I know it's like people are asking me questions during the thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, people respond. Most people respond. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid if you see Jerry West in sports business classroom to go up and ask him a question. Don't be afraid if we have the commissioner there to ask questions here, because the one thing you do not want to be is leave there like, oh my God, I wish I would have asked that question here. So you got to network. You got to have a portfolio, right? Don't be a great artist without a painting to sell. And you have to continually meet people. I mean, those are kind of the things that, as far as some learning tips that people will, when you get to Vegas here, that I'm going to be focused on.
That's great advice. I mean, anyone can take that into their job, whether it's sports or not. But Bobby, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was an honor to speak with you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this interview with SBC's lead instructor and ESPN NBA front office insider, Bobby Marks. If you did, please make sure to share this with your friends, like us on social media, and subscribe and leave a review. You can also find show notes at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/Bobby-Marks. Let us know you listen, and if you enjoyed this episode, tag us on your Instagram story at Sports Business Classroom. Text it to a friend and spread the news of the SBC Business of Basketball Immersive Experience. This episode is also brought to you by Hall Pass Media, a full-service marketing agency that specializes in brand consulting, event management, digital marketing, and creative design. For more information on Hall Pass Media, go to hallpassnetwork.com.